Hello, I'm Jonasz Rewiński and this is Break the Fake. They make them, we break them, and tell you everything you need to know. Just a few years ago, the Russian treasury was basking in the internal bonfire of petrodollars and the euros derived from natural gas sales. Half of the budget was consistently fed into the furnace by exports of black gold and blue fuel. It seemed that this fire would never go out. But Putin's war turned the perpetual pot of borscht into an empty pan. In the first quarter of 2025, oil and gas revenues fell by half, 789.5 billion rubles compared to 1.4 trillion a year ago. To put this in perspective, it's like going to a bar, ordering 2 beers, and being served warm water in a glass. The profitability of oil refineries fell to almost zero, 4.5 billion rubles, which is 23 times less than last year. A shift towards the east? Well, yeah, but it turned out to be more of a fall towards the east. Half of the shadow fleet, 426 tankers, is already under sanctions. It seems that the ships spend more time waiting in line at the penalty area than at sea. Ukrainian drones have recently become the new crisis management tool for the Russian economy. Experts say that in a couple of weeks, processing capacity will be down 10%. This is not production optimization, you see, but a real fuel crisis. The country that dreamed of freezing Europe is now freezing itself next to an empty barrel of petrol, apparently. Uniecha, a key hub of the Druzhba pipeline, received its nighttime drone art performance recently. Each day of downtime costs $15 million. Perhaps Russia isn't too big to fail after all. Now, the biggest blow, by the way, came back in 2022, the explosions on the Nord Stream pipelines. 17 billion euros in investments sank to the bottom of the sea like coins in a wishing fountain. The wish, however, did not come true. Europe did not freeze, and instead of a monopolist, Gazprom became a bit player in a bad comedy. War and sanctions have turned an energy superpower into a poor relative who no longer knows where to get money for the war. And most importantly, every Ukrainian drone now not only strikes factories but also cuts into the Russian budget. The Kremlin dreamed of freezing Europe, but in the end it was left with an empty barrel, as we said, basking in fading hopes and a flicker of a television screen playing one of Moscow's tired propaganda shows, presumably. And with Ukraine revealing more and more homegrown long-range weapons like the Flamingo missile, Russia's refineries and other facilities, mostly based in Western Russia, are beginning to look increasingly fragile, which makes sense. Once the Flamingo takes flight, Russia's energy revenues might soon turn into a big flaming O, meaning zero. Time for breaking news, meaning breaking of another fake news story. In fact, this time the Russian propagandists have been backstabbed by their own ally. Here's how it happened. For a long time, Putin, Peskov, Zakharova, and the entire chorus of Kremlin propagandists sang the familiar tune. There are no North Korean soldiers in the Joint Forces Operation Zone. This is nonsense, lies, and slander. Back in 2024, when asked about the participation of North Korean military personnel in the war against Ukraine, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov responded in his classic style. What about Kiev's Western mercenaries, volunteers and instructors? In Moscow, whataboutism, you see, has long been an art form, even if it has as much to do with fine art as collecting NFTs had to do with sustainable investment.
Поэтому военнослужащие западные уже давно работают на Украине. Это часть гибридной войны НАТО да и Евросоюза против нашей страны, и мы это прекрасно знаем. Что касается наших отношений с Корейской Народно-Демократической Республикой, то мы уже не раз говорили, что договор не является секретным, он является открытым, весь текст опубликован, и он ни в коей мере не нарушает никакие положения международного права, потому что предполагает, среди прочего, оказание содействия друг другу в случае, если на одну из стран участниц договора будет совершено военное нападение. Так что здесь наша позиция абсолютно честна, открыта. А вот такие лукавые заявления о том, что вот мы под каким-то предлогом направим войска на Украину, ну это, наверное, просто попытка задним числом оправдать то, что уже давно происходит.
Later on, Russian dictator Vladimir Putin himself dismissed rumors about recruiting volunteers from North Korea to participate in the war as, again, nonsense. Bear in mind, this is the same guy who tried to convince us that the invading Russians in Crimea were random cosplayers in uniforms taken from a military thrift store.
В реакции Запада доминирует оценка визита как провоцирующего напряжение в регионе. Утверждает, что российская сторона чуть ли не просила прислать корейских добровольцев для участия в СВО. Что вы можете сказать?
Хочу сказать, что это чушь полная. Это, еще раз хочу подчеркнуть, полная чушь. Корея наш сосед. С соседями мы так или иначе должны выстраивать добрососедские отношения. Да, есть определенные особенности, связанные с Корейским полуостровом. Мы обсуждаем это, обсуждаем открыто. Мы ничего никогда не нарушаем, и в данном случае ничего не собираемся нарушать. Но, конечно, будем искать возможности для развития российско-северокорейских отношений.
Remember how North Korean troops had trouble with choosing which way to fire their guns? Back in the early days, it was reported that the North Koreans, who were absolutely not there, no siree, would randomly start firing at their Russian friends because they didn't understand the language or generally didn't have a clue who they are fighting against or even where the hell they were deployed in the first place. Utter chaos. Anyway, seems like it's the same friendly fire story all over again, except now we've got friendly fire in the propaganda domain, because as the Kremlin kept denying that Kim's troops in Ukraine ever existed, Kim himself went and awarded them medals for the war. And while Peskov and Zakharova unanimously swore that there are no North Korean military personnel in the special military operations zone, and there cannot be any, Pyongyang made a dramatic television display featuring the arrival of planes carrying the bodies of the invisible heroes who died in the Kursk region.
다시 밟지 못한데도 따뜻한 조국의 흙에 덮이기를 원했던 아들들이 꿈에도 그리 없던 품에 자기의 넋을 묻던 못 잊을 8월의 그 밤. 조국의 명령을 받들어 이역의 혈전장을 누비던 그 모습들은 보이지 않아도 어머니 조국에 드리는 자랑찬 승전 보고가 국기에 뜨겁게 실려오고 있었다. 머나먼 이역에서 조국에로의 수말리 길에 용사들이 덮고 온 공화국기는 그의 존의와 찬연함을 지켜 비록 생은 짧았어도 조국과 혁명을 위하여 조금도 두려움 없이 맞받아 나간 그런 삶은 조국과 인민의 기억 속에 길이 남아 빛나게 된다.
Kim Jong-un getting all emotional there, and so did the TV announcer. Actually, so much emotion and empathy on display seems rather weird for a regime that keeps threatening everyone with nuclear weapons on a daily basis. Anyway, it seems that the Kremlin will have to urgently come up with a new story, now that it is literally sitting there utterly confused looking at Kim the way Julius Caesar must have glanced upon his bestie Brutus following the rather unpleasant knife incident that you might have read about in history lessons. Advice for the Russians: maybe next time at least discuss your propaganda plans with Kim Jong-un, because with this video he literally broke the Russian fake right there. Which, by the way, also means the North Korean dictator is trying to steal my job. Anyway, this is it for this episode of Break the Fake, but please stay with us here on TVP World because we've got more news, more latest updates, and more commentary for all of you.